Hey guys, Verbal Engine 95, recording live from your local county prison cell. Sorry I was a day late. I had an episode recorded yesterday, and I did not care for it in hindsight, and rather than put something out that I wasn't confident in, I figured I would, take the extra day to put something, late, but to make sure it was at least something I felt better about doing. And that fight is the fight I'm giving you today, which is Elektra from Marvel and Karai from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This will actually be, I think, the second Marvel TMNT fight, because I think Shredder or Silver Samurai, but that's a bit of a far cry from what's happening here. So, yeah, I mean, both of these characters have in some way or another had different incarnations. Elektra more so from having different lives and whatnot, because she's been dead and brought back to life several times. And Karai has had several different incarnations. I think she technically debuted in the comics, and but her first TV debut, if I'm not mistaken, was in the 2002 series, I think. We used to call it the 2000s series, and then the 2012 one came out, so yeah. I think that was her first TV debut. Her most popular as a character, I would argue, is the 2012 series, because that kind of flushed her out the most, but that's vastly different from most of her other origins, but we'll get into that in a second. But we're gonna start with Elektra. So Elektra, what's her name? Not Nachios, not I forget how to pronounce it. I always just call her Electric Nachos. But she was born in Greece, or at least in an island off of Greece. She's Greek. She considers herself Greek. And her father was an ambassador, and her mother died when she was young. Her father urged her to get into martial arts, and she took to martial arts very well. And when her father died, she tried to seek out Stick, the man who ended up training Daredevil. And Stick denied her because she was so full of rage, right? She was too upset by her father's death that she couldn't, he couldn't take to her teaching, so he turned her away. Unfortunately, that meant she would end up working for the Hand. The Hand being the the mystic assassin organization in Marvel. Essentially run in service of the entity known as the Beast. The Beast is a sort of multi-dimensional being that has a lot to do with the collective consciousness and all that, right? But she would end up taking a lot of missions for the Hand, some under mind control, some not. And eventually she got into a skirmish with good old Bullseye. And I believe I've talked about Bullseye. I think I did a Bullseye Deadshot video before. And Bullseye is probably one of those very underrated Marvel characters, in my opinion. Because he kind of gets the stigma of guy who throws things. But no, he is a top-level assassin, and he got to show that off when he fucking killed Elektra. I mean, like, whew. And, yeah, then she would get brought back to life. In some cases, she'd been brought back to life by Daredevil. In some cases, she'd been brought back to life by the hand. But in the instance where she was brought back to life by the hand, she ended up gaining a couple more traits to her. She gained some level of telepathy. She was able to astrally project herself into another person's mind. So basically, like, take over a person's body mentally. She's able to kind of like identify people and where they are, right, by locking in on their mind. And she also just gained a general. She gained what is described as the instincts of a snake, but in a very literal sense. See, when she was brought back, she was kind of brought back through the beast, and some of that essence of the space between humanity and animals where thought and instinct merge, she kind of obtained that, right? So when I say she has animal instincts, I mean literally her brain has been turned off, like her conscious thought has been turned off before, and she was able to operate under animal instinct, right? Like, it is a separate thing. It's not just combat prowess. It's literally survival and adaptation that is separate from conscious thought. So, and that with how just naturally deadly she is with her, and we all know Elektra for having the 2 sighs and everything, but for how just like naturally deadly and, you know, she is, and how well trained she is, being able to think consciously and have like the experience that she has, but also have that animal instinct to fall back on and drive her, is, and as well as those abilities, makes her incredibly formidable. She is, I mean, she's taken over the role of Daredevil at some points. I think currently she might be Daredevil. I'm not entirely sure. She's actually taken on the entirety of the Hand before and just continued killing many of its operatives for a very long time. Yeah, she's not to be trifled with, but as I say in many of my videos, the same could be said about her opponent, Karai. So Karai, in her most popular adaptation being the 2012 series, Karai was secretly the daughter of Hamato Yoshi, raised by the Shredder. While we probably will take, I mean, knowing Death Battle, they would probably take that into consideration. Because things have happened to Karai in the 2012 series that didn't necessarily or have never really been explored otherwise. It's not something, I wouldn't say that backstory is like, would be considered the definite backstory, because her most consistent backstory is that she was usually abandoned as a child and was raised by the Foot Clan. And yes, you know, Elektra's assassin organization is called the Hand, and Karai's is the Foot. So if this fight were to happen and they got a Brandon Yates track, it would probably be called like Hand Over Foot or something like that, you know, like whatever. That's not the reason why the fight is that's not the reason why I chose this fight, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so regardless of whether she's secretly somebody's daughter or just being, you know, she was raised by the Foot Clan, right? She and Shredder by proxy. She was brought in, you know, she was trained personally and brought in under their tutelage, and she is, you know, gone her entire life and is pretty steadily considered the second in command of the Foot Clan. She even at times when the Shredder was killed or missing, she has also taken over as leader of the Foot Clan in many cases. So she's incredibly capable, and this is due to her generally being considered on par with the Turtles. She usually has a rivalry with Leonardo, because they both happen to use swords. So it's considered like... So she's considered like, at least she's a match for any of the Turtles individually. She also tends to use a bow as a weapon, but that's more like she doesn't use it typically mid-combat. That's more of a sneak attack sort of thing for her. But yeah, in the Rise of the TMNT series, I know she gained the ability, and again, her backstory in that is consistent with her other backstory, so we can kind of blend all those together for the character. She also has a few succinct abilities. One of them is the ability to basically like transmute any object into a weapon. And I don't mean like, oh, she's versatile, she can make anything a weapon. I mean like, if she touches a tree, she can... It's like Full Metal Alchemist. Like, she can touch a tree and destroy the parts of it she doesn't need through, like, tactile telekinesis, essentially, and make a sword, right? She can turn a rock into a knife. She can turn a... Right? She's even been able to do this using what would be considered some degree of telekinesis by using several objects that she wasn't touching to form a weapon, right? So it seems as though it can only really be done if she's forming a weapon. And the other ability she has is described as soul transferal, as in she, again, separate from conscious thought, can essentially switch bodies with a person, or have her soul leave her body to enter another person. But this is not like I said with Elektra, where it's like she can take over a person's consciousness. She essentially uses her soul as a means to, like, she basically possesses a person, right? So that's kind of a separate... That's kind of like a separate thing happening there. Yeah, but then the other instance, which is, again, maybe the thing to omit, but I think they would probably use it, is that Karai has been exposed to mutagen before. Unlike the Shredder, where he just hulks up and becomes Super Shredder, Karai actually went through an animal transformation, like many people exposed to mutagen, and became a snake. And unlike most people who were exposed to, transformations through mutagen, she was actually able to control hers. She did kind of go into like a blind rage from it, but she turns into a snake person where her arms become mini snake heads and she becomes a snake, and she also retains the ability to use nerve toxin, essentially, which she has used in her human form by virtue of kissing Casey, and then his lips go, and then his body goes numb and he falls asleep. So yeah, she has all of that at her disposal and is one of the top operatives of the Foot Clan, has even fought against the Shredder on several occasions, and has fought all the Turtles on several occasions as well. So yeah, I would say these are two very adept competitors here. But how would things happen if they were to go hand to hand? Well, the big thing to consider for me is that Karai, I would think, gets the advantage of their individual power sets. Because while Elektra has the instincts of a snake, Karai can literally turn into a giant snake, Hydra looking thing, right? Not giant, but like, can turn into a human-sized snake with arms, essentially. And can also use some of the abilities attributed to her. Like, I think she's like broken bones and had them heal or something, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know that for a fact, so let's not consider that as a factor. But she can actually use the ability of a snake, which is funny that these two also have snake adjacency. And Elektra's being able to like mind transfer is pretty much countered by Karai being able to soul transfer, right? Because Elektra has to do with switching a person's like consciousness and kind of trapping their consciousness in her body. It is a switch. It's not just her entering a person's mind. But Karai can swap a person's souls. So she would essentially, that's like separate from consciousness, right? She would be able to do that even if her body lay dormant in Elektra's body. So those things kind of cancel each other out. Karai being able to make anything into a weapon isn't really like a determining power. So I wouldn't say that like gives her an edge or anything. I just think the fact that like Elektra's ace in the hole is pretty much countered by one of Karai's abilities, and then one of Karai's other abilities surpasses Elektra in that regard. Not to mention, Elektra has a much bigger track record of getting, killed. She's been killed several times. Not through lack of ability or anything, but just through like conspiracy. And so while you could argue that I wouldn't even argue that she has the experience factor, because she started martial arts, I think, when she was like 8 or something. I mean, Karai was literally adopted and raised by clans of assassins. She's been taught to kill and do ninjutsu basically since she was an infant. And if we take into consideration Elektra's, gaps of time from being dead, I would say that she doesn't necessarily have the same experience that Karai does. That being said, Elektra has been trained. She's been part of several teams. She's been a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. She's done, so all these characters, she does have a diversity of her own right. I'm not trying to make her sound like she's inferior to anyone, but I think Karai probably takes this. But this is, I would say, a very close and I would say a very good fight. So, yeah. But that's what I'm doing for today. I'm going to try to get an early upload in today since I couldn't get one yesterday. But regardless, Verbal Engine 95. See ya.